a moment. Have you watched Sound of Freedom yet? Sound of what? Sound of Freedom. It's the sleeper hit of the summer that made as much money as the new Indiana Jones movie did on opening day. And it has the backing of not just Republicans and religious conservatives, not just Ted Cruz and Elon Musk, but also QAnon folks and the internet's tinfoil hat brigade.
Held people's hands as adults who'd suffered what OUR and Tim fraudulently represented that they were fighting. They defrauded all of us. They defrauded multi-million-dollar donors.
But these films are created out of moral panics. They're created out of fear, and only people like the ticket buyer can help bring these trafficking rings down.
Sound of Freedom. Have you seen the movie yet?
I don't think I can emotionally handle it.
I think the mainstream media is trashing this movie is because the people in mainstream media and Hollywood with power are all
This is not some waste your Friday night movie. Culture shifting moment.
If the media wasn't telling me not to, that was my sign that I had to watch it.
The truth of what's going on with adrenochrome, with organ harvesting, with all of that stuff, that's right. I'm not afraid to say it.
We're getting refunds for the Sound of Freedom.
If you're gonna rally around the I hate anti-freedom movie, you're probably
Other people come out and complain, it's not our fault.
Why don't they want this movie to succeed? Why is Hollywood so defensive about it? It almost gets you thinking, doesn't it?
So it's just this theater you're having an issue playing movies in right now? Okay, no surprise there. Thank you.
So Angel Studios boldly has set up a pay-it-forward program.
The pure evil can no longer hide.
You know, I didn't even really want to watch Sound of Freedom. It was just one of those movies that seemed like a bland Christian-based film on the surface that I totally would have just let slip by me if it wasn't for the controversy that the film sparked. I sat down to finally watch the film because I've heard so many volatile things about the film, and after watching it, I don't really know what all the hubbub is about. The film itself isn't really that controversial, at least on the surface.
So, I think the worst part of the Cosby thing was the hypocrisy, and I disagreed.
You disagree with that?
I thought it was
The film opens up with a girl singing and playing the sandal drums, this launching into the setup where a woman shows up at the girl's house saying she has talent, claiming to represent a talent agency. While talking to her dad, the younger brother shows up and she keeps saying that these kids are cuties, which is kind of the same movie as this. The dad takes his kids to this hotel where he's not allowed to enter and he just leaves them there without supervision. First off, why would you just leave your kids here? Why wouldn't you wait there for them? Well, the dad returns and guess what? The kids are gone. Father of the Year and Actor of the Year. His performance is so good that you can't even see the emotion or feel any kind of worry coming from the character. But good thing he just kind of paces around a bit. This is when we cut to Tim Ballard, played by Jesus Christ, also known as Jim Caviezel, during the middle of a sting operation busting a Here they find tons of images and video, and Jim has to sift through it all. I just love the fact that Jim Caviezel's only expression the entire movie is a blank stare like he forgot how to human. Ballard comes into the cell of the and he just lets him out like, what? Is this a thing they can do? Ballard tells him, hey man, I'm like you, and the guy's like, wait, what? This is so wild. It's basically Serpico.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
So Ballard ends up letting him go so he can help hook him up with a child. They basically just let this creep walk, which I understand is to catch more, but do they actually do this? Is he not like a flight risk? It just feels wrong. And well, of course, the stupid falls for Ballard's trap.
Never trust
With the new information, Ballard heads to the border to set up a blockade and bust the trafficker with the little boy. Ballard, for whatever reason, takes the little boy out for burgers after finding out the boy had been, well, let's just say it's not good.
Oh, jeez. Oh, boy.
Most of the movie, by the way, is just characters sitting and talking. Every major scene in the movie is just sitting and talking. Anyway, the boy gives him a medal that says Timoteo, which is honestly a weird product placement for gay men's underwear. Ballard reunites the boy with his father, but learns that his sister is still missing. Why don't you show some emotion, Jim? The scene is calling for emotion, Jim. Quit staring into nothing, Jim. Why don't you try to act? He sets up an operation to go to Cartagena to meet up with another agent who has connections with Vampiro, and no, not that one. Vampiro is an ex-cartel dude who buys children to set them free, but the only problem with that is you're always creating a demand. It's like me buying a Pepsi to throw in the trash because it's inferior to RC Cola. To make less people want to buy Pepsi and more will have to buy RC Cola and actually enjoy a superior soda pop for once, but every time I go back to the store, there's only more Pepsi.
Son of a bitch, as I was leaving, they're bringing more.
Because God's children are not for sale.
Well, apparently they are. With Ballard having no real leads to the sister, he decides to open up a fake large child resort that's members only. If you know, you know.
And then just touch me till I can get my satisfaction.
However, without any real leads, his boss is like, "It's time to come home, Ballard." Ballard is like, "I got to reach these kids." And the boss is like, "Damn it, Ballard, you're uncontrollable, Ballard." And Ballard is like, "What can I do to reach these kids?" So after talking to Vampiro and a quick snippet with his wife, Ballard quits his job and goes rogue. After doing this, they set up a sting to have these cretins bring 50 kids to the island where, bam.
You've activated my trap card!
Hear that? That's the sound of freedom.
Oh, we did it. Let's pack it up and go home, boys. Well, unfortunately, after the big bust, the sister wasn't there, so Ballard continues forward to find her. To find her, though, Ballard and Vampiro go undercover as doctors to go into nearby villages to help look for the sister. After bouncing from village to village, they finally find her in the Rambo 4 camp. Ballard takes out the big guy Rambo style and sneaks out with her, returning the girl to her father. The little girl returns to play music untraumatized, and we get some true story snippets that eventually leads into the special ending credit scene that is a part of the Pay It Forward campaign that, trust me, we'll get into later, but that's the film summarized.
If you do not go support The Sound of Freedom and you're against this film, like, you might as well come out, EDP 445 gang, Chris Hansen gang, you are that's the only thing that makes sense.
I went through and summarized the film so you would kind of get a better idea of what the film is as we dive a little bit deeper into this. The film itself, without all the controversy around it, is a pretty bland film that highlights a problem. I do think it's funny that in the raid on the beach you can see the orange tips on the guns, but I've seen this film several times now, and honestly I just think it's super boring with uneven pacing. Jim Caviezel, honestly, I think gives a terrible performance that feels emotionless and wooden, especially after seeing a lot of interviews with this guy to make this video. I genuinely don't think Caviezel even knows what human emotions are. He doesn't have this pained face in my opinion, as other reviews have stated. He has the same deadpan face he has in countless interviews. He has resting emotional void face.
Emotional, damn it!
Performance-wise, the real standout to me is Bill Camp as Vampiro, who in my opinion was really holding up the film. The film is super bland when it comes to the cinematography. Everything is done in either mid-close or close-ups. There's never clever choices in blocking. Everything is pretty much shot reverse shot, which is just honestly starting to become a pet peeve of mine in dialogue scenes. The best shot of the entire film is the opening shot, but it never does anything close to that again. It's never really bad either. It's just so bland though. It has this cheap feeling to the movie that the budget only feels inflated because of the lighting and color grading. There's some really bad sound design, and the constant reuse of the little girl's opening theme feels super cheesy after a while. There are certain details I think the film conveys well. It does look into how these operations work, but it feels like it's done in an exploitative way that's grossly amplified because of the Pay It Forward campaign at the end, which, trust me, we're gonna go into. It's almost like those In the Arms of an Angel commercials where it's pushing to show you the grotesque to get you to donate by emotionally manipulating you without the film actually doing anything in service of it. What I mean by exploitative is, think of something like a grindhouse movie that uses violence and nudity to bolster along the runtime and sell you seats. The film is using the abused children in not only a way to guilt you into the Pay It Forward campaign, but to also bolster the runtime, to try and keep you emotionally hooked, because the film isn't doing anything with Ballard or the crew to do that. Ballard is almost a flawless character. There's nothing for him to overcome. He has only the plot challenge in front of him, and when we get glimpses of the side effects of the job that could have been very interesting to explore, we don't explore it. We also don't explore the conflict of him quitting his job that's honestly just a throwaway in a short scene. We could have dived into how the job affects his picture-perfect family life, but we don't spend any time with them. Instead, Ballard is the savior and he always gets the results. There's never any time you question what the outcome of the film will be. You never worry if he's in any danger because the film presents Ballard as someone who always has the answers, which is weirdly brought around at the ending rescue murder escape plan, where the film goes full tilt off anything based in reality with Ballard's story that feels like a completely conflated ego. The film shows you the abused kid, only really focusing on one as a cheap way to try and to get you emotionally vested without working on actually getting you emotionally invested with all the characters and situations. These scenes literally add nothing to the main plot at all. If you completely cut them out, the story would would be the same. You are not doing anything with the child's plotline other than being exploitative. Honestly, outside of the controversies, I left the film originally with a 4 out of 10. It wasn't anything special, boring most of the time, but I didn't see what all the hubbub was about. After rewatching it, I did find it worse, but I was also watching it under the context of the true story and the Pay It Forward campaign. It left such a sour taste in my mouth because it felt way grosser and sleazier on a second viewing, and I'm dropping it down to a 2 out of 10.
Why the you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God.
Sound of Freedom is based on a true story about Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad, or also known as OUR, and their work. OUR being the anti-trafficking organization Tim Ballard helped form. While the main plotline of the brother and sister isn't true, there are key points that are true. Yes, Tim Ballard worked for Homeland Security in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, also known as ICAC, until him and a few special operatives left to start Operation Underground Railroad, or OUR, in 2013. The main centerpiece of the film is based on Operation Triple Take. This is a sting operation that led to over 100 individuals being rescued, and not just all minors. This was done at 3 different locations at the same time. In one of the busts was a beauty queen that allegedly was involved as one of the traffickers, according to the documentary on the sting that is narrated by Ballard himself. And on OUR's website, the traffickers used a fake modeling agency to get the kids alone and then would traffic them, using Kelly Johanna Suarez, who was the model, to help legitimize the ruse. The traffickers were wanting to eventually build a members-only child brothel, where in the film it's Ballard's idea to open up the club. This part of Operation Triple Take is what is mainly used as the inspiration for the film. The real story takes place in Cartagena, where Ballard was, Medellin, where Batman was, and a third operation in Armenia headed by Matt Osborne. All 3 stings were done simultaneously. The scene at the border is based on a 2006 case where Earl Buchanan was stopped at the border in Caliexco, where he had a young boy with him and no ID for the boy. They found a videotape where Buchanan was the boy and notified ICE, which the responding agent was Tim Ballard. Ballard claims the boy jumped into his arms and gave him a medal and asked him to find his sister. However, while Buchanan's story is confirmed with court documents, Ballard's statements aren't reported and at this point are pretty much just hearsay. The character Vampiro is based on a figure named Batman. Batman was a money launderer for the cartels, but he never went to prison like the film says. He also claimed to never slept with an underage victim who was trafficked like the movie says, but instead stated he started his new crusade after meeting a young girl whose mother was pimping her out.
Lupita, if your mother lives 2 blocks away, why are you living here in this orphanage? And she's like, oh, you know, my mom for $5 of used to put on videos, and whatever they did in the videos, I would have to do with the men that came and gave her the drugs. It's that little girl, and I was like, even I'd done a lot of things. I couldn't conceive of that.
Ballard and his crew have gone into areas undercover as doctors, but they did this in search of a child named Gardy, not Rosia, and Gardy has still not been found. Ernest Oshinsky is supposedly based on a real person that wrote articles and books on pro-arguments of being a Ballard said he read the man's book and got him to confess after the man gave him a signed copy of the book.
You think I'm that stupid?
You stupid bitch!
However, I can't find any information on this case or even the real name of the perpetrator because I'm getting nothing with Ernest Oshinsky. That is, I have been stumbling through that take after take. It just wasn't pulling anything up. During an interview with Jordan Peterson, Ballard mentions the real life case.
The person depicted in the film, Oshinsky, this person had written articles, self-published, of course. He had a book that he actually sold on Amazon.
There's also an article by Caleb Park saying that is true, but I can't find any information or evidence to back it up. So, the 2 main characters are made up based on 2 separate children. Oshinsky's character that sets up the main plot of the film is based on a different person from a different case, where in the film Oshinsky leads Ballard to Buchanan, who is named Earl Backman in the film. However, the Buchanan bust actually took place in 2006, so these are 2 separate cases being melded into one. Ballard didn't take the boy from the bust out for burgers either. The claims that the boy jumped into his arms and gave him the necklace, asking to help find his sister, is only hearsay. There's no reports. The reason Ballard goes to Colombia in the film is not the reason he went for Operation Triple Take. In the film, Ballard meets Vampiro based on Batman, who has a similar story to the real Batman, just kind of inflated a bit. In the film, they set up that the island bust is what sets Ballard's ultimatum, but in real life, Ballard left in 2013 to set up OUR, so the film is kind of mistelling and dramatizing some of the real events. The true true island sting Operation Triple Take was done in 3 different locations, actually rescuing more people than the movie states. In the real operation, they rescue more than just kids. The movie explicitly states they rescued 54 kids, so kind of completely discounting the young adults and adults that they actually saved during the raid in real life, cause we only care about these kids, which is adding to that exploitative nature I was talking about. Since Rocio wasn't there, that propels Ballard and Vampiro to go undercover as doctors to look for her. In real life, Tim and OUR would send a group of operatives disguised as doctors and real doctors into Haiti and the Dominican Republic to look for Gardy Marty. Gardy Marty is a Haitian child born in the US who was around 3 years old when they disappeared from their father's church in Port-au-Prince in December of 2009. This case being the catalyzing event that would eventually be part of the reason Ballard started OUR. However, this operation to go undercover was based on a supposed solid claim that Ballard said, but was actually from a psychic medium from Utah with no evidence beside her visions. While the doctors would help the locals, the fake posing doctors would search the area for Gardy. No, Ballard didn't kill anybody, and technically, he didn't save the kid either. So there's pretty much some based on true story moments in the film, taking bits of truth from here or there to create this homunculus of a narrative. Even the closest thing to the truth, the island bust, is an amalgamation of different attributes of that actual story. Ballard didn't come up with the Epstein Super 8, that was a trafficker's idea. There were 3 large stings, not just one big one. Also, weirdly enough, one of the investors in OUR and Operation Triple Take is Glenn Beck. Just thought that was kind of weird, I guess.
I had a great uncle and a great grandfather. They were fighting for the North. They were fighting to free the slaves. They did it. Why can't I? I'm in. We'll raise your first $1 million.
We're not saying we become a police force.
I know a lot of based on true stories does this. They take liberties with the true story to make it more structured for film. In most cases, that's fine. I'm sure there's some more egregious falsehoods out there when you're telling somebody's story. I'm not even really that mad at that aspect of this movie. If someone wants to take liberties with the true story, then they need to have that essence still there, and I don't feel like this film does that. Some of the essence is here, but that essence is a savior complex that I feel like Ballard actually has. From interviews to articles, Ballard has this the fish gets bigger with each retelling kind of mentality. I mean, just kind of look into the Earl Buchanan case. I mean, that alone can kind of show you a little bit of the warped retelling of Ballard's history. Ballard wants to be the hero, and in some ways he is, but he's not the all-encompassing hero I think he wants to be, or that the film makes him out to be. My biggest issue with taking these liberties with this film is that you're marketing the film as a biography to highlight issues of child trafficking, and you're marketing it in a way to make it feel like the audience member is actually helping to fight child trafficking. Especially like when the whole entire Operation Triple Take, the actual bust, would have made for a much more compelling story on its own. You don't even need to tack on the Rambo ending. There's enough meat and taters here with Operation Triple Take to make for a pretty sweet film that honestly, you don't even need to take that much liberties with. Not to mention the Pay It Forward campaign at the end. The film is twisting the narrative to make it more emotionally exploitative, editing itself to exclude any adults rescued, giving you 2 fake children to latch onto, and an extremely exploitative ending where Ballard goes full Jesus mode, killing a dude and rescuing the girl when spoiler alert, he doesn't even rescue the child in real life!
Hello, I like money.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
Money!
Now, I know I've mentioned the Pay It Forward campaign a couple times so far in this video, and you may be asking yourself, well, what is that? During the ending of the film, during the credits, there's a special message presented by Jim Caviezel to the audience saying that they want more people to see the film. You can use the QR code to buy tickets, and other people can redeem those tickets to see the film for free at participating theaters. Honestly, I have no problem whatsoever with a Pay It Forward campaign. If someone else wants to buy a ticket for somebody else to redeem, I'm for it. Like, that's a really cool actual option to have to kind of market a film. And hey, if tickets don't get actually redeemed, that's just more money for the production company. However, what I have a massive issue with is this.
We believe this movie has the power to be a huge step forward toward ending child trafficking, but it will only have that effect if millions of people see it. Feel free to pull out your phones and scan this QR code.
Using the issue of child trafficking and marketing it in a way to prime the audience into thinking that if they buy tickets to this movie that they're actually helping fight child trafficking is gross. Like, if you go onto Angel Studios' page for Sound of Freedom, there's an FAQ section where if you look at the answer of how can I join the fight to end child trafficking, it just says to pay it forward and see the movie. You're equating seeing the film to actually doing something to help end child trafficking. Awareness is good. It is not the solution. Portions of the pay it forward or the film's earnings isn't going to any organization that actually fights child trafficking. You're using loaded phrasing to emotionally manipulate people into buying tickets because they actually think they're doing something good. Watching Sound of Freedom, the film is the first step in spreading awareness about child trafficking. What you do next is up to you. Even at the very end of the page, it just links you to another page that doesn't include any nonprofits or even list of different organizations for you to check out, but instead tells you to do your own research with another big pay it forward spot at the bottom of the page. Like, you couldn't even be bothered to like present some kind of information or some kind of portal for people to be able to go to actually find ways to actually help. You have done nothing to help fight child trafficking. There's also 3 different versions of this special message, and I'm just going to play them verbatim.
I want to thank you all for coming out and watching this movie. I'm guessing some of you are feeling sad, maybe overwhelmed, or even a sense of fear, which is understandable. But living in fear isn't how we solve this problem. It's living in hope. It's believing that we can make a difference because we can. But I want to make one thing clear. This movie you just watched isn't about me or Tim Ballard. It's about those kids. You know, Steve Jobs once said, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. Abraham Lincoln credited Harriet Stowe when she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. This powerful story inspired millions to rise up and fight against slavery. I think we can make Sound of Freedom the Uncle Tom's Cabin of 21st century slavery. This film was actually made 5 years ago and wasn't released till now, with every roadblock that you can imagine being tossed in the way. And the names you see here on the screen took a stand, and they made sure this story could be shown to all of you. And now all of you have the opportunity to continue telling this story. We don't have big studio money to market this movie, but we have you. And the baton has now been passed to you. You are the storytellers that can get people to come see this film in theaters. When you come to a theater, you experience movies differently. There is no pause button. There are no distractions. We all have an experience as we watch the film together as a community. It makes it possible for strong messages like this one to take root. Sound of Freedom is a hero's tale, but I'm not talking about the character I play. It's the heroic brother and sister in this film that work to save each other. They are the true heroes. The most powerful person in this world is the storyteller. Together, we have a chance to make these 2 kids and the countless children that they represent the most powerful people in the world by telling their story in a way only the cinema can do. For a couple of months, while Sound of Freedom is in theaters, these kids can be more powerful than the cartel kingpins, or presidents, or congressmen, or even tech billionaires. We believe this movie has the power to be a huge step forward toward ending child trafficking, but it will only have that effect if millions of people see it. Now, I know it's weird, because we're in the theater, but feel free to pull out your phones and scan this QR code. We don't want finances to be the reason someone doesn't see this movie, so Angel Studios boldly has set up a pay it forward program where you can pay for someone else's ticket who might not otherwise see it. If you're able, we invite you to pay it forward by buying a ticket for someone else, or if your budget is tight, share the already available free tickets with as many friends as you can, or do both. Join us and millions of others as we ring Sound of Freedom and hope throughout the world. And just remember this, God's children are not for sale. Thank you.
Now, I wanted to play that verbatim because I think it shows how manipulative the editing is, considering the home release just cuts out any mention of a theater whatsoever. Then during the Amazon release, bam! Nothing. There's no message. There's nothing here. Why wouldn't there be something here? If you want to raise awareness and this message is so important to fighting child trafficking, then why omit this on potentially the largest platform where people is going to watch this? using phrasing such as, "There was roadblocks every step of the way." "This is Uncle Tom's Cabin for kids."
"It's in your hands now."
"We can make these children more powerful than the cartel kingpins." All of this is supercharged phrasing to emotionally manipulate your audience into them giving you money. And it worked. Currently, over $30 million has been raised through the Pay It Forward campaign, with 242,000 people donating, which is on an average of $125 a person. The film grossed $184,178,046 domestically and $66,392,350 internationally, with a worldwide gross of $250,570,396 in box office.
When you pay it forward to Sound of Freedom, you're amplifying awareness about the dark realities of child trafficking. Your contributions will help this important film reach a new worldwide audience, ensure filmmakers can continue telling impactful stories like this one, and encourage millions of people to take unprecedented action against this modern-day evil.
Angel Studios has a help anti-trafficking page where if you run a non-profit organization to fight child trafficking, you can rent a theater, fill it with 70% attendance, send them a picture of the head of the org holding a logo of your nonprofit, fill out a form, and then they'll reimburse you for the cost of hosting the film. Again, there is no evidence that any of the profits or the Pay It Forward campaign will actually go to help fight child trafficking. Angel Studios is a for-profit business. When you pick an option for your Pay It Forward price, it's worth noting that it doesn't say you're purchasing a ticket. During Caviezel's speech, he says that you pay it forward by buying someone else's ticket. On the purchase page, it says you're paying for a one-time subscription to reach one person. There's also a disclaimer underneath the order summary saying, "Upon submitting my Pay It Forward payment, I acknowledge and agree that Angel Studios becomes the owner of all funds upon receipt. Your Pay It Forward purchase, like other entertainment purchases, is meant to increase the audience and reach of the film Sound of Freedom. It's not a donation." Angel Studios does actually do like a lot of Pay It Forward stuff for their other films, so I am kind of curious like how those other campaigns are marketed as opposed to Sound of Freedom. Now, Angel Studios does have a spreadsheet of the breakdown of the Pay It Forward campaign. These numbers are as of December 31st, 2023, and don't currently reflect the Pay It Forward campaign page for Sound of Freedom. According to the spreadsheet, the Pay It Forward campaign Angel Studios actually lost over $3 million, with over $26 million to Pay It Forward receipts equaling over to 1.8 million tickets paid forward, but with only $21 million worth of ticket redemptions. According to the marketing cost and third-party ticketing being over $6 and $1 million, this leaves the marketing campaign in the negative, potentially. This doesn't go in depth into what the marketing costs are or the third-party ticketing fees. I'm just assuming the ticketing fees would be like online theater convenience fees, but the marketing, I'm not sure. What's weird is the crowdfunding portal Vast Portal LLC that is used as the crowdfunding source, which according to Angel Studios' website is also a part of the Pay It Forward campaigns, is owned by Harmon Ventures, who also owns the Harmon Brothers ad agency and Angel Studios, potentially having their hands in different pots of the profit bowl that isn't clearly disclosed. So Angel Studios or one of the companies involved might actually be in violation of Rule 300B of the SEC's guideline on crowdfunding, which basically means if you're crowdfunding for a film, you have to use a neutral platform that receives a fee for service, which Vast Portal LLC is owned by Harmon Ventures, owns nearly 48% of Angel Studios, according to the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I am kind of curious if some of these fees that we see in this spreadsheet is actually going back to the Harmon brothers. The transparency here is pretty greasy. Now, a lot of the contention of this film is more political, which we're about to jump into, but honestly, this is my biggest issue with the film and why I think there should be more talking points around this, because it seems like everybody just kind of ignores this Pay It Forward campaign, which I honestly think severely taints the film and kind of completely undermines the message of the film, using hostile and exploitative marketing to earn money, bar backing and exploiting the very real problem of child trafficking to earn a profit, doing nothing in the process to actually help the cause. It's just super gross to me. Like, this is disgusting behavior, and instead of focusing on this, we gotta focus on the lunacy political tiffs.
The hardest in our children. The people at the top are harvesting our children for a tyrannical.
There's really only two camps when it comes to a lot of the controversy and conspiracies around this film. Camp 1 is basically, they don't want you to see this film, and Camp 2 being QAnon, each with their own sub-talking points. Camp 1 is mainly devolved into a left versus right issue, with the general consensus is that the left believes that this is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms, and the film has connections to QAnon, whereas the right says this is an important film that if you don't like it, you're a The mainstream media is trying to keep you from watching this film. I do want to state out of the gate, there is no real political leaning with this film when you watch it just as it is. And thanks to bad reporting on both sides of the aisle, I'm looking at you, CNN, Fox News, and the Rolling Stone, I'm sure that helped drive the narrative that this is a them versus us kind of film even further. One of the main controversies of this film was the theaters themselves. One of the main issues was supposed technical difficulties during the film's release or the film screenings themselves. Stuff like no AC in the theater, having no sound, glitches, the film hadn't been downloaded properly, and I even seen one example where they had the audio track for the seeing impaired. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of these people go to the movies very regular, but as someone who's been to the movies a ton in their life, I've pretty much have experienced every single one of these things before. It's something that if you go to the theaters enough, you're gonna experience things like this. I actually just last weekend we went and saw Furiosa and it had no AC going in the theater. It was hot and sticky. Now you might be saying, yeah, well this happened a lot with Sound of Freedom. Yeah, well, films are distributed by their studios in many different ways. Considering Sound of Freedom is distributed by a smaller production company, their DCPs or downloads could have been plagued with issues. It's not really uncommon to see smaller productions have distribution issues. Also, if I'm to open up my conspiracy brain as well, I wouldn't put it past people to pull fire alarms during the screenings for clout because of all the hubbub about this film, because a lot of what I saw was just fire alarms.
So I took me and my daughters to go watch The Sound of Freedom today, and about an hour and 20 minutes into the movie, we get a random emergency evacuation. None of the staff knows what's going on. The mall wasn't being evacuated, just the theater.
Fire alarm goes off and people still watch the movie. They can't stop the truth.
When Red and I decided to go to the movies.
Every time we see an employee confronting the crowd, the staff was trying to be very accommodating. Our local theater had the film and there weren't any reported issues of the showings that I've heard of. It's also worth mentioning theater sizes. Sound of Freedom wasn't projected to be a very big hit, so a lot of the theaters that I saw that people were going into were smaller auditoriums, and at least in my anecdotal experience, a lot of the smaller theaters typically are a little bit more neglected because they're not the big money makers. So I've had a lot of these issues in the past in the smaller theaters, typically. Another issue was like sold out theaters with like hardly anybody in them. Some of these reportings got so bad that Angel Studios actually had to make a statement saying that, hey, AMC Theaters has actually been a great partner with us. Also, Jim Caviezel talked about knowing people that went in and bought out entire theaters.
We're selling out right now. I mean, our biggest war right now is to get more theaters. And so people are calling in right now to ask for these theaters. They're not just going to Angel.com. I've known many people that have gone in and literally bought out all theaters.
But another driving fact into this whole they don't want you to see this film is the promotional interviews with the cast and producers who are pushing the narrative that this movie has been shelved. Even at the end of the film, Jim Caviezel is pushing the narrative that they don't want you to see this.
This film was actually made 5 years ago and wasn't released till now, with every roadblock that you can imagine being tossed in the way.
As you mentioned, little David against Goliath. Disney is Goliath. We're the little David. Disney is trying to corrupt your children. Little David, Son of Freedom, is trying to save your children. So
I think that the left and these media outlets, they don't want to have a discussion that this film is going to compel. They know this film is going to shine a light on all of the things, all the atrocities happening to children, and so they have to discredit it by lying. I've been hunting them for 20 years, and they are watching this and they're salivating. They are happy that Rolling Stones and The Guardian are ripping on a movie that exposes them. So I don't like the fact that these media outlets are in fact, wittingly or unwittingly, running interference.
Let's be honest why this film was shelved. It was originally going to be distributed by Fox, but during the Fox and Disney merger, Disney pretty much scrapped all current projects from Fox, but it's also not really unreasonable to think why Disney would have shelved this film. Even director Alejandro Monteverde understands why this film was passed up.
We went through a very tough times finding a distributor. First, because of COVID. Second, it's a very difficult movie to market. So I want to say that I don't know which distributor saw the film, but I don't blame him for not taking it. It's not an easy movie to market. Just as whether it's just a hard film.
He's right, it's not an easy film to market. It wasn't projected to be a big hit as it was, and a lot of the reason why it was that big of a hit was because of the marketing from the Harmon brothers. Now I will say this, I don't think the marketing was very ethical, but it was successful. Just because it's a finished film doesn't mean companies are going to put it out. And honestly, this is a film that I wouldn't see Disney wanting to put out in the first place. It's not their MO. This definitely feels more like it should be in the hands of something like Angel Studios. It's a better fit. Also, since the film has been released, it's readily available like everywhere. Like you can watch it on Prime, you can buy it really easily from Walmart, Amazon, like it's around. Like it's pretty easy to get to watch a copy of this movie. Now this leads into Camp 2, QAnon. Why would people relate this film to the right and QAnon? Well, it's because of these two goobers.
And you don't mess around with Jim.
I honestly think Caviezel is probably another reason why this film has been shelved for years. Most brands don't want someone like him to represent a major picture. It's why you see a lot of recasting when something comes out about a celebrity, and while from what we know, nothing Caviezel's ever done or said is that damaging as what we've seen some others do, but his unhinged rants and beliefs are probably enough to sour a lot of producers. I'd say just Caviezel himself has probably drawn the line quite a bit to the QAnon conspiracy. For those of you who do not know what QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory and political movement that centers on claims made by an anonymous individual known as Q that has somehow gotten insider information. The movement strongly believes that there's a cabal of satanic cannibalistic child that's operating a global trafficking ring and has conspired against Donald Trump. And while I'm not sure if Caviezel outright said he believes in Q, he does share a lot of the same beliefs and speaks about a lot of what they represent.
The adrenochroming of children. Essentially, you have adrenaline in your body. I'll just simplify it. When you are scared, you produce adrenaline. If you're an athlete, you get in the fourth quarter, you have adrenaline that comes out of you. If a child knows he's going to die, his body will secrete this adrenaline. It's the worst horror I've ever seen, is screaming alone, even if I never ever saw it.
We're all going to die someday anyway. To be able to know one day that I'm going to stand before Jesus. So many pastors said, "What are you going to do when you die? What are you going to say to God?" And I said, "Well, I try to play you in a movie. I think I did it pretty good. But then I did Sound of Freedom too. So it's a little more of insurance policy for me."
And I believe it's going to move a lot of whistleblowers to come forward, but not one. In the hundreds, maybe thousands of them worldwide start coming forward and telling the truth of what's really going on. And that will bring an end to this whole thing.
They do not want you to see this film. It is so good. And it's going to open your mind to what's going on in Epstein Island. And they're going to be whistleblowers that are going to testify to the truth of what's going on with adrenochrome, with organ harvesting, with all of that stuff. That's right. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid of you.
Must fight for that authentic freedom and live, my friends. By God, we must live. And with the Holy Spirit as your shield and Christ as your sword, may you join Saint Michael and all the angels in defending God and sending Lucifer and his henchmen straight right back to hell where they belong. The storm is upon us.
The adrenochroming of children. It's the worst horror I've ever seen, even if I never ever saw it. I never ever saw it. It's the worst horror I've ever seen. I never ever saw it.
Hey, put me with the wackos.
Another thing to push the far-right slant is the fact that the film was shown to Donald Trump, including a post-film interview with Trump as well.
We just saw a great movie and unbelievable, and Jim, you were really incredible.
Pretty much anything to do with Trump in a positive light is going to put you into the far-right camp in the eyes of media coverage. Even the director once again understands that showing the film to politicians divides people.
When you start having screenings with political figures, I myself decided to not be part of them because I don't want to, unfortunately, we are in a world that automatically is going to create a division. I am a storyteller, I'm an author. I like to make movies not for one group or another group. I like to make movies for everybody.
Now, I will say that, yes, this film was made before QAnon. Calling this a Q movie is dumb. The only real tie to a QS narrative is the like Epstein Island, but again, it was made before Epstein was busted. Also, it is loosely based on a true story, which the part that is mainly based on, that section, funny enough, is actually probably the most accurate part of the film. I think the only thing that really ties Q to the film is just Caviezel, but then it becomes more of a separating art from the artist kind of talk, and that's would have to be a whole different video. I think another reason why the film has some of those connections to the right and why it had been shelved is Tim Ballard himself.
Darkness fills my heart with pain.
Ballard is a pretty controversial figure of his own. He is devoutly religious, has strong stances on the border, which is a right talking point in most cases, although I do believe he leans more toward libertarian. Ballard does come with his own baggage, from heavy criticism on how him and OUR operations are ran. He's been criticized for inflating his own stories or outright lying, inflating the numbers and success rates of him and OUR. He's been accused of increasing trafficking, and these criticisms come from past OUR operatives, claiming that while trying to find traffickers and victims by presenting a lot of money to pay for these kids, people would go out of their way to try to find people to sell to OUR, basically creating a demand where there is no supply, and because of this new demand, now creating a new supply.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, did these guys just go round up some girls they know or like whatever and said, come to this party, sleep with these Americans, these rich Americans will pay you or something? And it just never sat right with me. And I saw that firsthand. And so when people say maybe they create trafficking, I'm not saying that didn't happen. I do think it was a flawed method. Now, looking back with perspective, at the time, I didn't know anything. I was just the guy going on the ops, and that was the way they were doing it. But as I look back now, it's very conflicting, because on one hand, I absolutely think that there was probably a few guys that went out to find girls to bring back because they were trying to get tips from Paul or from Tim or whoever, and they were trying to prove that they were traffickers.
Attorneys for Tim Ballard say he's innocent, that he did not sexually harass or assault any of the women who have come forward in the past few months.
Oh, geez. Oh, boy. But since the film has been released, Ballard has been accused and is in current lawsuit where several women have come forward claiming sexual misconduct and assault, with the lawsuit also claiming misuse of funds and potential money laundering from OUR and Ballard from its donors, also claiming that Ballard has a substance abuse problem. The lawsuit claims that Ballard used a couple ruse where Ballard and a female operative would play a couple when meeting traffickers as a way to deny having to touch the victims, claiming basically, oh, I can't because my wife is here. The lawsuit claims Ballard would manipulate situations for the couples to be together, even participating in the ruse in strip clubs, and in one instance of bringing his son with him to the strip club during one of these ruses. My favorite claim in the lawsuit is this: Ballard would engage in a ploy where he would tell women if they were offered alcohol, which is forbidden by the Mormon church, that she should take the drink and then open mouth kiss him and spit the alcohol into his mouth, and then he would spit it out when the traffickers were not looking. This is kind of really gross in a comical way. However, when you look deeper into this lawsuit, there are some really gross things that are not in a comical way. Using lines like, "Is there anything you wouldn't do to save a child?"
Enslaving kids and helping trafficking victims. I unknowingly became a victim myself. The very organization that claims to fight traffickers turned me over to the trafficker because we were exposing evil. The truth is, the only evil I really saw was Tim Ballard and what he did to me. Looking back now, I know it was all an elaborate ploy just to justify Tim's wicked desires.
The situations I was put in by Tim, the manipulation, gaslighting, and sexual assault and sexual abuse I have experienced from Tim Ballard has had a devastating impact on my life and those around me. He made it seem that people were listening to all our conversations through all sorts of electronics. I was terrified to tell anyone, especially the authorities.
The entire perspective of Tim Ballard is through a manipulative and sexualized lens. You see narcissism and sociopathy in everything that he does because he has no empathy. The pain that you see here before you is a fraction. It's a fraction of the pain that he's caused. Because there are other people that aren't here that are suffering just as bad and are terrified because of the threats and manipulations he made regarding his association with the AG. But they're not rescuing children. They're making a morality play for money and for donations, and they're using videos of us and other fake operations like the training where I was injured
Operation Underground Railroad has removed Tim Ballard from their organization, and Ballard, being a Mormon, had the LDS, or the Church of Latter-day Saints, excommunicado him. So basically, Ballard got Stuckmanized.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints releasing a statement denying their association with the former CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, Tim Ballard.
Of course, this is an ongoing lawsuit, and so everything is allegations to be determined. And the film was made before these allegations. But I think it's worth mentioning since the film is kind of built around Tim Ballard and his propaganda. There is, at least to me, some parallels between the accusations of how Ballard would manipulate saving children in the couple ruse to kind of the same way as Angel Studio uses it to manipulate you into buying tickets. Now, I don't know if what's alleged in the lawsuit is actually true, but if I was a betting man, I'm not betting on black. I'm also curious to see the results of Kelly Johanna Suarez's lawsuit as well. You may remember her from earlier, but Kelly is the real-life beauty queen that was arrested during Operation Triple Take. She is suing Ballard, Angel Studios, and a slew of others for defamation, claiming to have been a victim of trafficking herself, claiming that the film is continuing to push the narrative that she is a trafficker. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any of the court documents on the results of her trial, but according to reports, she was jailed for 18 months, but never faced any convictions. She claims that she was just attending a party without knowing what the root of the party was there for, and that she was mistaken for another girl who was involved with the trafficking that actually wasn't there. I don't know if this has any validity, but it will definitely be interesting to see how this lawsuit unfolds.
So you're not the prophet, huh? You made me look stupid. I'm gonna sue you too.
I thought going into making this video, it just would have been a fun video to make to kind of poke fun at the film and some of the volatile reviews and the whole "they don't want you to see this film" talking points, but this just kept unraveling more and more as I looked into it. While I think the film as a whole is a pretty bad film that's honestly just bland and forgettable despite its subject matter, its web of deception, manipulation, and downright gross behavior of those involved that really adds a shadow over the film. While the Ballard lawsuit is alleging some pretty disgusting things, when it comes to only the film and what the film is doing itself, I just can't help but get the ick from its Pay It Forward campaign. That's honestly my real hang up with the film. It casts a light of exploitation over the entire situation. To me, this film isn't about awareness. This isn't a film about saving children. The film is exploiting the stories of these children in the same way the traffickers exploit these children, for money.